Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at the Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright. Space hole go boom.
Today we're talking about minute 127, which begins with Tony's final push and ends with Tony falling in space. Again, Dr. Arnold T. Blumberg, shout out to you. You don't get to talk about this minute with us, but we look forward to future conversations.
We sure do. This would be your last minute of not talking to us, and you've been great.
You've been great. Oh, man. All right. So we have been tracking Tony and this nuke. He's got it in his grasps. We're at this point, there's no Clint in this minute.
No.
I don't know if he's still sore from his landing below. Hulk is watching. Is this kind of an odd shot to have of Hulk kind of like from the top of the building, the rubble, as he kind of looks up at what's going on?
I don't know if it's odd. I do think it's, it doesn't strike me necessarily as odd. I kind of like it that like all of the heroes looking up shots are shots looking up from like some sort of despair, some sort of this was our last shot location for each of those characters. And I kind of like it. Like Hulk is surrounded by fire and rubble and effectively brimstone. And
looks like he's in the Ivory Coast with Natasha and Clint from earlier.
Exactly right. Exactly. So I do like that. And then we get the we already know that Nat is in her sort of last minute position, right? Because she's standing with the scepter in the blue goo sphere. And then Tony is heading up.
We get the interesting POV, presumably Tony's POV, not through the HUD. It's basically like camera on the bottom of the nuke shot.
Yeah. As
it's heading directly towards Stark Tower. At this point, it's just, it kind of looks like AI Tower, which is, I suppose, kind of fitting as the birthplace of Vision. but basically, he is, I know they're trying to make this as dramatic as possible, but seriously, like that nuke flies straight at Stark Tower, and only in like 2 frames does it actually go, oh, we're going to actually go up.
Yeah. And
to the point where Tony like rubs his belly up against the top of his tower. Dramatic purposes, sure, but I'm just like, I just don't buy that curved like that.
Okay, but I do like the skip off of Stark Tower. I think that's funny.
His little belly rub, yeah.
Yeah, I like the belly rub.
Yeah.
He and Stark Tower are now belly buddies.
Keeping it alive. I wonder who else becomes belly buddies over the course of the franchise.
We need some sort of a tick sheet.
All right, so Tony, we get Natasha, as you said, kind of the dramatic shot of her watching, and then the long shot of kind of the cityscape as the little dot of Tony flies up into the portal. Then we cut to him actually going through, and everybody celebrates, and there was great rejoicing. Everybody on the helicarrier bridge, is cheering and hugging, and Agent, go ahead.
Well, I just want to, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I feel like we need to at least call out that the long shot of him flying up, there is one more sled on the left of the beam and one more on the right that are flying down. And I laugh at those guys because, like, where have they been? Where have they been?
It's, when there's a lot of sleds to go through, they're in a line. And so they're at the back of the line. Are like, are we going to finally ever get into this fight? And they finally get through. All right, we're finally through.
Yeah. I thought that was really funny. Anyway, I'm sorry. So you were saying there is much rejoicing on the bridge. Yes. Yeah. Everybody's very excited.
There's rejoicing on the bridge. We've got Kobe Smulders, Agent Hill. She is relieved. She's like, oh, phew, all of that work I've been doing behind Fury's back.
Yes.
Doesn't really matter. So she looks to Fury, who, of course, kind of looks at her. They have this moment of acknowledgement, and then he just looks away. It's everybody as having a moment of relief here that the nuke didn't go off. Although, it's funny because it hasn't stopped the Chitauri invasion. So they're basically just relieved that the nuke didn't go off, I guess.
Yes. Right. And Fury in particular, that he was able to, clap back at the World Security Council, right? Like he got his way, even though the battle is still, being waged.
Well, and I guess that's my question. Like, Tony's through the space portal, and, we're going to see him in a minute on the other side of the one-sided hole. But it does make you wonder, should Fury be, as the director, like directing? Should he be saying, okay, you're through that, what's everyone else doing? Like, keeping tabs on stuff. Like, he's been, as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., very silent through this battle.
Well, and because I think, I get that cinematically. Like, we know, like, logistically, if this had been more of a real thing, he would have been more of a commander. But in this case, we needed Cap to step up as the practical leader for the film. And, we just have to believe that Fury was more of a useful character up on that helicarrier at some point.
Yeah, it is one of those things. I guess as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and obviously the helicarrier has been damaged and they've been trying to get it going and stuff like that. So obviously they couldn't get it into the fray. But at the same time, having some communication point would be good. I don't know. It's just one of those weird things. Like, I don't know. I guess he's not like the general. He's just like the director. So he sends them out into battle and lets them do the work, right?
Yeah. Can I ask you probably a dumb question, because I just don't remember when this happened. But when did the bridge of the helicarrier fill up with all those people?
The bridge has generally been pretty full. They're just always sitting at those consoles, so you can't see what's actually going on. You can't see as many of them because the consoles are all taller than the people.
Okay. I guess I can buy that. I just feel like the last time we spent any real time on the bridge, it was when everybody left, like after the bloody cards and the death of Coulson, and it felt pretty quiet on there. And I just couldn't remember seeing extras behind those consoles. And now they're very enthusiastic.
Well, I think what happens when there's drama on the bridge, like when Fury is talking to Tony and Steve at the table and the bloody cards and stuff, it's higher than all these people. It's farther back. But I think everyone here kind of hears what's going on, and they're just like, oh, okay, we just got to better duck down, hunker in so nobody can see us, because we don't want to be, we don't want to interrupt the drama.
Okay.
So they pretend they're not here.
They pretend they're not here. They possum. They possum. Bridge possum.
Exactly. The bridge possums.
Right.
This is a room full of bridge possums, yes.
Excellent.
All right. Can we go to the other side of the space hole?
Oh, my goodness. At least cell service we get to see where cell service ends.
My first question, though, could Tony have pushed the nuke into the hole and dropped down immediately and not bothered with this?
Always. Absolutely officer thinking, Andy. Why does he have to be so thorough? Is really what we're asking.
Yeah, like, I'm really taking this through this hole. Like, I'm going way through.
All the way through the hole. Why would he do that? It's ridiculous. It's to just push it through the hole and turn around.
Yeah, the only reason that, based on what happens, is I do wonder if he was hoping, essentially what we actually see, he was hoping to get through the hole to see where they're coming from so that he could actually aim the missile at their ship. The only reason that I struggle with that as an idea is because he doesn't do any aiming once he's through. He continues on his straight line projection until he basically, his system's shut down and he falls back. And I still have not been able to figure out, like, I was trying to do like what research on his suit, like what are those things that pop off of his shoulders? It looks like some sort of it looks like almost like the entire shoulder missile units pop off or something to kind of propel him back toward the hole. I can't figure out exactly what's happening there, but it's like he doesn't do any aiming. And I guess that's really the issue, is like, if his intentions are to come through the hole to aim it at the Chitauri, I want to see him come through the hole, aim it at the Chitauri, and then fall back.
Yeah, go back.
But instead, it's just like he might as well have just tossed it through the hole, and that would be the end of it.
And you wonder, like, I recognize that there is probably different technology that I do not understand for maintaining somebody's life support in space compared to maintaining somebody's life support under the sea. But we've already seen Tony actively working and fine under the sea in this movie. And somehow he's in space. And what is it that fails for him just where he is?
Yeah, because this was something that I had, because he kind of learned in Iron Man 1 when he tries flying really high, and eventually he actually doesn't quite defeat, the villain in there, but he learns that if he flies up really high, his suit will freeze up and it'll shut down and he'll fall back to Earth. And that's kind of the first time he takes down Ironmonger.
Right.
I feel like that was his lesson. And we've always seen Tony learning lessons from the things that he develops. And so, I don't know, it was one of those things that as he does this, it just kind of surprises me that the idea of potentially going to space at some point hasn't crossed into his mind after that experience, and that he hasn't made his suit something that could actually handle getting up into space.
Yeah. And there's another thing. While we're on this subject, I'm not a scientist, but if I take like a plastic dome, like a ball. Let's just say I take a plastic ball, like a rubber ball you get at a grocery store. Remember those? The cages?
They're bouncy
and
balls.
you submerge the bouncy ball under water, and then you poke a hole in it with a pin. What happens?
Nothing.
Well, slightly larger pin.
Sorry, was that the wrong answer?
Yeah, it was absolutely the wrong answer. You did not understand the assignment. Right, there's an exchange of pressure. So we have this atmosphere on Earth, and then you expose it with a hole to the vacuum of space.
Yes.
What what should happen to Tony as he crosses this? Like, is he being sucked out into space at all? How does he fall back in? How does that work?
I don't think the space hole... Here's my scientific understanding of this space hole. It's not a hole like a drain in a... I think a better example, like you put a plastic, a sheet of plastic wrap across your sink and put some water that's baggy enough to hold water, and then you poke a hole in it. Mm-hmm. I don't think that if the space is the water side, I don't think the space is going to like start pouring through into the sink below. Like, I don't think that's how this sort of space hole, like the Tesseract space hole, works. I think it creates a film across it that things can move through it, but I don't think the vacuum of space or the atmosphere of Earth are necessarily going to like push across that film.
Because of the film. God, I love that it's the film, the impermeable or the semi-permeable film barrier.
It's like a cell
at the one-sided hole. It's like a cell. Okay.
Right. And Tony's the virus the virus. He's crossing through the film of the cell, and he's infecting space right here.
Okay. God,
or is he the antivirus and the Chitauri are the virus, and they're coming through into the cell, and he is now going out he's the white blood cell, I guess.
I don't care.
I'm losing track of my science here.
Yes, you are.
Tony's the nanobot.
We lost track of science long ago.
Regardless,
anyway.
Yes. So I think what happens here, it's not like he falls to the hole, because again, vacuum of space, he can't actually, there is no falling here. If anything, he's going to let go of the missile and keep following along with it the entire way. The only reason, and this is why one of the reasons that I kind of struggle with that moment where he kind of slips off the missile and starts falling, because it doesn't make any sense. But it does make sense when those those missile containers, again, I think that's what pops off there.
You think those are some sort of propulsive thing that forced him to go the other way?
Yeah, they push him back toward the hole. Now, it's just lucky that they push him toward the hole, because if, again, vacuum of space, there's nothing pulling him to the hole. If he had missed it, he would just be, Sandra Bullock in Gravity, just floating off into space forever.
Yes. Oh, and I think they are in the same cinematic universe, Gravity and Tony Stark.
I'm sure they are. I will say, I am a little disappointed that when we come through the hole here, we're not coming through a minefield of frozen Leviathan gut chunks.
God, they should have clogged the film.
Right.
Man.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
All right. So okay, obviously he loses the call. I'm amazed his call made it this far, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's Tony Tech or what, but he loses the connection with Pepper. And I'm curious, like, how you go along with everything that we have here, because this is essentially Tony's fall, which becomes a big part of his arc in the next film and moving forward. It kind of, there's this spiritual way that it's kind of done, or something like very internal as far as what we start seeing with Tony, because he's in darkness. When we cut to his face, like the last time, as soon as the suit goes down, everything kind of disappears, and we're left with this shot of just kind of light on his eyes. It's kind of like this interesting little kind of, I don't know, there's something spiritual about just kind of him in this moment. And then the next few times that we cut to his face, it's like he's in a void, like a reddish glowing void. And we just see his eyes. We do see a shot right toward the end of this as he continues falling at about 57 seconds, where it's like a side shot of his face.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're so far away from his face that there's no way that there wouldn't be a suit or like his helmet at this point. So we step into kind of this internal space, I think is the way that I read it, for Tony, where we're really kind of getting this sense of, again, I keep going to spiritual because it seems like they're trying to say this, and he'll talk about this in later films, this connection to something bigger than him. Yeah. And this idea that he's gone into this space where he just suddenly feels small. I think it kind of puts him into a different place. I mean, how do you read the way that we're stepping into his head here?
No, I actually really like that because, we know at second 58 or 9, when we get that reverse shot and we're looking at Tony moving backward toward really infinity, right? Like that's the image that I get out of this. But there is no light glowing on him, even though it is, as you say, glowing on his eyes, like his internal space. I think that's a really nice touch, even if there's room for me to believe that it wasn't intentional, that we actually are meant to believe where we're seeing light from the from the explosion, and they
through
didn't
those little
put
slits.
it on. But to me, I like the I like this sort of homage to Tony's grandiosity being wrought small, right? Like it is, he is but a player in a grand universe, and we are actually seeing that played out right here in front of the one-sided hole. And I think it's great. It's great for his character. It's great for where his character goes from here. And his arc continues through Infinity War, through Endgame.
It reminds me a little bit of Daniel Kaluuya in Get Out when he's hypnotized and he's just in the falling in the blackness, and the TV is that little tiny dot.
Yes.
That's kind of what it feels like here. Yeah.
Totally. We've gotten to the end of this minute, and we haven't talked about the most important thing that we need to clock in this very minute. The bomb has already gone off, Andy. Do you know, have you done the math? Because I have, on exactly how long it has been since the pilot gave us the 2 minute and 30-second countdown.
2 minutes and 30 seconds. It's a little more like 38 seconds, I think, right? 2 minutes, 38 seconds.
It is actually, it's close enough to account for speed ramping.
Right.
It's a 2.58 minutes. So yeah, it's a little bit over 2.5 minutes, but I have to say, for film math, that's pretty darn good.
I agree. I really agree that they did a good job with that.
Yeah.
They probably just they probably edited all of this together, and then they just, figured out how much time the pilot needed to say. Like, I feel like that's probably, anytime filmmakers are doing something where it's a timed thing, the smartest thing you can do is wait until you've actually edited the sequence, and then either
ADR
film that line or ADR the line in and get it in there so it's actually accurate. If more filmmakers did that, we wouldn't have these ridiculous things where it's like 2 minutes clocks and then like 5 minutes later something happens.
Yeah, but then what we would have is more stuff like 322 seconds on the clock.
Okay, there's that too. It does take some of the urgency out. Well, to that point, though, I'm glad you brought up the explosion because it is another big element that we do have to talk about because as the mothership blows up, we cut back to Earth and the Chitauri instantly collapse. It is this hive mind thing that they've kind of decided that they're going to use to control all of this. I don't know. The Chitauri, we've talked about this with some guests in the past, but it's like they are sentient beings. Yes, they've kind of been integrated with this biomech that they are covered with and these armor plates and everything. Does it make sense that they just collapse and like it feels, does it end up feeling like it's too easy a way to kind of end the fight at this point?
Absolutely it does, right? Because the hive mind, the implication of the hive mind is that it's based on some sort of insect mentality, right? But if you kill the queen bee, the rest of the bees don't drop out of the sky immediately, right? Like it causes a lot of chaos for bees, as far as I understand, but they don't drop out of the sky. That's just not how it necessarily works. Like if we are to believe that the biomechanical integration for these creatures has so fully taken over that they die when they are disconnected from the server in the sky, Andy, that means that the Chitauri are as helpless as the Leviathan itself.
Oh, Pete, don't make me start with them.
Our campaign should be to save the Chitauri. The whole Chitauri. They're being absolutely used and violated in a way that isn't... I don't care how ugly they are. They're the victims here. Nothing? Do you buy it?
No, I feel like I have to. If I'm already buying into the Leviathan, I'm going to have to buy into the Chitauri. But here's the thing that I still don't get. Like, is there a kill switch implanted in their heads so that they fall over instantly? And we talked about this with guests, like, comparing it to the Phantom Menace, because they're just like the droids in the battle on Naboo. And it's just like, it just is kind of a dumb way to get out of it.
It is a cheap way to get out of it, but I can buy it a lot more if you consider it just straight technology, right?
Yeah, like you're right. Phantom Menace, I actually buy better than this.
I totally buy Phantom Menace. I believe it. Right. I believe it better than this because these are supposedly, we're supposed to believe that this is an army. This is like this is a slave army, right? Like I get it, but they're an army for hire. Maybe they're not slaves of the other and his, ilk, but they are flesh, right? We're supposed to believe that they have minds. They're not individually controlled as far as we understand by a server in the sky until this moment when it's like, oh my gosh, there's much rejoicing across the planet. I don't buy it. I don't love it.
I just want to hear a Chitauri now say, if you cut us, do we not bleed?
Yes.
Like, I really do think that the real call to arms is to save the Chitauri and the Leviathan, their mother, to stop the use of them as slave army labor that have kill switches implanted in their brains to carry Russell when the time comes.
Yeah. Did you just carry Russell into a verb?
I just did. Poor Carrie Russell.
She must be so proud.
It is the worst watching her with that brain bomb. Ugh. But I think that's what happened.
So good.
I think
that's what happens here.
I think if we could see a Chitauri face without its mask and its helmet and everything, I think the eyes would do the same thing that Carrie Russell's did.
I think, Andy, we're onto something. This entire line of inquiry, we need to follow this to where it ultimately ends, and people aren't going to like it when the truth is out there.
Eye violence, Pete. I'm surprised we don't see that. This movie is full of eye violence. I mean, the Leviathan's eye explodes, the ocular extraction. Violence. I think all the Chitauris, their eyes are just a mess at this point. Oh, right. Just awful. Awful stuff.
They aren't even covered anymore. There's no insurance company that will cover eye violence for Chitauris. It happens to such flagrant abuse of eyes.
It's just horrible. The last of our Leviathans does a roll and dies crashing onto the top of 130 East 39th Street at the northwest corner of Lexington and 39th. Again, we follow that up with this the shots of Tony. And I don't know, I guess the other thing, and we kind of leave this minute, is Tony dying at this point. I guess that's kind of the way that our minute closes, as it seems very much like his eyes close and he's accepting death. It's kind of, I mean, he sees the bright light, right?
Well, my question for you is, do you have any memory of when you saw this movie and whether or not you thought maybe they were going to kill him in this movie?
No, and I think it's because he's drifting toward the space hole. I think I assumed that if he had Randy Quaided it and taken it all the way up to the ship, I would have assumed that was the death of Tony Stark. But because he lets go and doesn't Randy Quaid, I think that I assumed he was going to live. It's a very Independence Day minute. Suddenly I'm like, it's exactly the Randy Quaid thing.
100%. It's a
Take
very
this up your
Independence Day minute. Yeah. What was the release date of this one again? It was 2011 something? 2012. Unfortunately for the story, we already knew Iron Man 3 was coming. Right? Like, we knew it had been announced after, apparently after Iron Man 2, somewhere in 2011. Like, so I'm sure I already knew that Iron Man 3 was coming as part of their big next wave. And I think it's unfortunate for this moment in the movie because it means it has so much less weight, he says, watching Iron Man float through space. And and so I think that does a disservice to it. There is a real chance had we not known of the expanded universe that they set up a believable exit of Tony Stark after a number of movies in Phase 1 to actually die heroically here and not, 10 years later. I think that's interesting.
It is. Yeah. And I think that is the danger of these stories, these films, when we know that people are, again, they're comic book heroes. You really don't want to kill off your comic book heroes. So the fact that he actually does die by the time we get to Endgame is a big moment. And are they ever going to try bringing back an Iron Man in some capacity? I don't know. I feel like Robert Downey Jr. kind of owns the role. It's like, everything that they've been, quote, trying to do with Indiana Jones. It's like, you don't bring back Indiana Jones. Like, Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And
ship has sailed.
Yeah, right. And so it does make it hard when presumably a hero is going to die. Will they let him? And you kind of don't buy into it.
I mean, I think that's the challenge. That is the perennial challenge of these things. And it's become even more so with so many of these movies. Like, there's so many movies. How can you believe anything anymore?
Especially with the multiverse. Like, everyone, no one will ever die because you just go find them again in another thing. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
I'm looking at you, Gamora.
Let's wrap things. She didn't die. She's in the same multiverse. It was time travel that brought her back. Oh,
you're right.
Don't even get me started.
Don't even get me started on time travel.
Once you have time travel and multiverses, everyone's going to live forever. All right, let's wrap it up. We're going to have Robin Burge joining us again tomorrow, and should be fun to chat with him about minute 128. So, Pete, thanks as always.
And Hulk with the assist.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.